While on the whole, Labour have had a good set of local election results, in a number of regions, they've taken a hit thanks to their handling of the war on Gaza. Now, the first signs of trouble came from Oldham. Labour lost control of that council after losing 5 seats and independents winning 7. Now, many of the winning independents ran on an explicitly pro-Palestine platform, and Oldham has a large Muslim population. Labour also had poor results in other wards with high Muslim populations in towns and cities across England, including Blackburn and parts of central Newcastle. And these were scenes at the Blackburn count. So the Blackburn independents won in all 9 of the wards they contested. Now, as you can see, they're celebrating in front of Palestine flags and balloons in the Palestine colours. In Rochdale, George Galloway's Workers' Party won 2 seats from Labour. They're obviously campaigning on Gaza. And in Manchester, a Workers' Party candidate took out the council's deputy leader. So the person who lost there was Labour. Now, on average, according to the BBC, Labour's vote is down 11% compared to last year in wards where more than 1 in 10 residents identify as Muslim. Chair of the Labour Muslim Network, Ali Milani, told the BBC Keir Starmer would have to work hard to win back Muslims' trust.
We have heard Sir Keir Starmer say that the Labour Party is a changed Labour Party, and we are desperate to see a Labour government. But that changed Labour Party cannot leave Muslim populations in the rearview mirror. We have to bear in mind Muslims historically have been amongst the most loyal supporters of the Labour Party. And we cannot now dismantle what has been decades and decades long relationship between Muslim populations and the Labour Party. My call to Sir Keir Starmer is please, this is the last warning. This is the last time we go to the polls before a general election. We have so much work to do with regaining the trust of Muslim voters. And that begins by calling for an immediate arms embargo of Israel and making sure that Muslims feel like our voice and our lives matter equally to those of others.
So Ali Milani there spoke about the need for Labour to win back the trust of Muslims. He was speaking to the BBC about 10:30 this morning. Within the hour, though, some in the party proved they had other ideas. So Rob Mair is political editor of the BBC Midlands. And at 11:20, he tweeted this. Labour sources tell me they believe they have lost the West Midlands mayoral election, with their campaign severely dented by the issue of Gaza. They think independent Ahmed Yaqub will come third in some areas. Votes won't be counted till tomorrow. Then, this is the key bit. Labour source, quote, it's the Middle East, not West Midlands, that will have won the street. So that's the Tory candidate, the mayoralty. Once again, Hamas are the real villains. So saying Labour might lose the West Midlands, essentially because of Muslim voters, and this is because they support Hamas? That quote was read out on the BBC to Labour's deputy campaign coordinator, Ellie Reeves.
Senior party, Labour Party sources said it's the Middle East, not the West Midlands, that will have won Andy Street, the contest. Once again, Hamas are the real villains. A Conservative source has gone back to our political editor there saying that quote is vile, and they insist that the contest is extremely close. Yeah. So that issue coming up certainly there as well.
Is that the language that people should be using?
This is the first time I've heard this.
That is the language.
This quote, and we need to see what happens in the election in the West Midlands. I was in the West Midlands yesterday campaigning, and it wasn't where I was the issue that was coming up on the doorstep.
Right, but is that the language that Labour candidates, Labour councillors, Labour mayoral candidates should be using?
Well, it's not the language that I would personally use, but we need to see what happens with that result and analyse, them when they come out. But we haven't seen those results yet, Joe.
So Ellie Reeves clearly hadn't been given her lines for that yet. She didn't know if she condemned it because no one had told her yet. The Labour Party would ultimately, though, condemn the comments from the source. So this is Rob Mair again, so the Midlands political editor. A Labour Party spokesperson this time said, the Labour Party has strongly condemned this racist quote, which has not come from anyone who is speaking on behalf of the party or whose values are welcome in the party. Now, there is an ambiguity because Labour source, who is that? Right? Is that someone who's working for the Labour candidate in the West Midlands? Is it a councillor? Is it someone who knows Rob Mair in some kind of Labour HQ? I mean, it could be anyone, really, this Labour source. You'd assume, this is someone working for the BBC, that they would only share it if this was someone, who had a reasonable claim to be speaking for Labour. Aaron, What do you think of this? So both, I suppose, this quote from the Labour source, but then also Labour's bigger problem in wards with high Muslim populations.
It shouldn't be happening. Do not say a Labour source, because for all we know, Michael, that could be some has-been, some former MP, some nobody, some influencer, Lord, saying something absolutely unacceptable. And I'm sure Keir Starmer thinks it's unacceptable. I don't sing the man's praises very often, but I think he would say that's an unacceptable thing to say. And it's attributed to Labour, and then they have to defend utter nonsense, utter crap. By the way, there are many racists in the Labour Party. This idea that Labour has always been an anti-racist party, not true. The West Midlands Labour Party, the bastion, the heartlands of the old Labour right, very racist people, many of them. If you look at the Hodge Hill by-election in the early 2000s, Google that, Hodge Hill by-election, you'll see why I've said that. So I personally think it's very bad journalistic practice to say that when it's something negative about a party or when it's going to reflect badly on a party, I think it's bad practice. If there's a story where it's, huge public interest and exposing that person's status or profession or position could jeopardize their safety, of course, as a journalist, you have a responsibility to them too. But this is bordering on incitement to racial hatred. You can't just say a Labour source. For all we know, it's somebody that appeared on BBC Question Time last week as somebody who supports Labour. I don't even know what that means. It's such an expansive, capacious term. I don't think it helps. Journalists, political commentary, we're here to illuminate, to clarify, to make sense of things, not make things so ambiguous and impossible to understand or comprehend. So I think that's the first thing. Shouldn't be happening. Very bad practice. Ellie Reeves' response also, Michael, I mean, you've already mocked it slightly, but it's just absurd and obscene. I'm hearing in my earpiece right now, yes, I can confirm it's racist. This isn't VAR, okay? We're not trying to check if a football crossed a goal line. We're not trying to double check if somebody's foot was offside. Somebody has just literally told you a racist statement, and you should be able to say that. I understand you can't go, to continue with the football analogies, studs up, because you haven't been tasked with doing that by the party leadership. I understand. It's very easy to say, I find those words personally abhorrent, and I'd be interested as to who said them, because they're not something I would associate with anybody in the employ of the Labour Party. That's what you say. Very easy. I'm not an MP. I'm somebody who mouths off on Twitter, Michael, and comes on YouTube with you. And yet I think I've given a much more expert response than Ellie Reeves did, by the way. One of the most senior people right now with regards to how Labour campaigns. So, yeah, really astonishing thing to say. I think the journalists, like I say, shouldn't be just repeating it in the way they do and not naming them, or at least saying what their job is or their relationship to the Labour Party is. And I think Ellie Reeves' response as well, just the pits. But this really does underscore the point I made a moment ago. Labour has not always been an anti-racist party. When Corbyn said, I'm an anti-racist, you had people like Tom Watson saying, we've always been anti-racist. Tom Watson was the election agent in the Hodge Hill by-election. In the by-election when we saw a ton of racism. Phil Woolas, Google Phil Woolas scandal. He was dealing in racist tropes in order to save his hide in the 2010 general election. He was defended from pillar to post by the entire Labour establishment, including Gordon Brown. So the only conclusion you can make from that is that these people don't really care about racism. They care about it when it benefits them, when it's politically expedient. Oh, we can call Jeremy Corbyn and various people around him anti-Semites. Great, we can get rid of him, get our people back in charge again. Fantastic. He's a racist. You hear a literal racist statement from somebody who's purportedly a Labour source. I don't know if it's racist. I'll have to check in my earpiece like it's VAR. Come on.